You ever watch your own family smile at your father's funeral while secretly plotting how to rob you blind? Yeah, that was me. Standing there in my black suit, trying to keep it together, I could feel their fake sympathy like poison in the air. My father had been gone for less than a week, and I could already see the vultures circling. They weren't mourning him. They were calculating. Let me back up a little. My dad wasn't just my father. He was my hero. A self-made man who built a small construction business into a multi-million-dollar company. He taught me everything. How to work with my hands, how to be honest, and most importantly, how to recognize when someone's trying to screw you over. Family or not, he'd say, a snake is still a snake. I never thought I'd have to remember those words while dealing with my own blood. The first warning sign came at the funeral itself. My Aunt Linda, my dad's sister, wrapped me in this overly dramatic hug, the kind that feels more like a squeeze to see what you're worth. She whispered, "You know, sweetie, money can change people. You don't really need to deal with all that stress from the inheritance. We can handle it for you." I froze. Inheritance? I hadn't even thought about it yet. My father's body wasn't even cold, and she was already talking about who gets what? Then there were my cousins, Mark and Jenny. Perfect, shiny little angels on the surface, college degrees, clean-cut smiles, and enough fake charm to make a used car salesman blush. I caught them whispering by the buffet table, glancing my way, then smirking. It didn't take a genius to figure out they were already scheming. The thing is, I'm not the golden child. I'm the guy they all love to call the screw-up. I didn't go to college. I worked with my dad, learned the business from the ground up, but I never fit into their polished world. They saw me as some dumb laborer with dirt under his nails, not someone who could ever handle a fortune. And you know what? I think that's exactly why my dad trusted me with it. He knew I'd never take what he built for granted. When the will reading was scheduled, I was nervous but also curious. My dad and I had talked about his wishes before. He wanted me to have the company and the house, and he made it clear that Linda and her perfect little family weren't getting a dime. He called them leeches behind closed doors, and honestly, he wasn't wrong. So when the lawyer called me in, I expected drama. I expected tears. What I didn't expect was the bombshell that Linda had already hired her own lawyer to challenge the will before it was even read. Apparently, she was planning to claim that I wasn't mentally stable enough to inherit. Mental instability? Me? I don't even drink. But then I saw the smirk on Mark's face, and it hit me. They were going to play dirty. I can't describe the rage I felt in that moment. Imagine losing your father, and, before you can even grieve, your own family decides you're unfit to carry on his legacy. They wanted to paint me as some reckless loser, maybe even fake some evidence to back it up. And here's the kicker. They were so confident I'd just roll over and let them take it all. Well, that wasn't going to happen. As I stood there that day, staring at them across the lawyer's office, I made myself a promise. I wasn't just going to fight back. I was going to take everything they had. They thought they knew me. They thought I was the easy target. But they had no idea what kind of man my father raised. That was the moment the switch flipped in my head. I decided I was done playing the quiet, polite nephew. If they wanted war, I'd give them war, but on my terms. And trust me, by the time I was done, not only would I keep every penny of my father's fortune, but they'd regret ever crossing me. If you want to understand why this whole inheritance war turned so ugly, you need to know my family. On paper, we look like your average American family. Holiday dinners, awkward group photos, forced smiles. But behind closed doors, it's a nest of snakes. Let me start with my Aunt Linda. She's the kind of woman who thinks being the oldest sibling makes her the matriarch of the family. Growing up, I always remember her competing with my dad. If he bought a new truck, she'd brag about her husband buying something bigger. If Dad's business hit a new milestone, Linda would suddenly start talking about how successful her kids were. It was exhausting. Then there's my Uncle Richard, Linda's husband. He's the kind of guy who looks you straight in the eye while lying through his teeth. He's always been slick, too slick. Richard's that guy who shows up in a brand new suit, bragging about his investments, but somehow can't explain how he actually makes his money. Dad used to tell me, "Watch that one. He's always up to something shady." Turns out, Dad was right, way more than I realized at the time. And of course, we've got the golden children, Mark and Jenny. If you ever want to see what fake perfection looks like, just look at their Instagram pages. Perfect smiles, exotic vacations. Look at me, I'm successful posts every other day. But the reality? Mark's drowning in student debt, and Ginny's living off her fiancé's money while pretending she's an influencer. It's all smoke and mirrors. Now me? I'm the odd one out. I never cared about impressing anyone. I didn't take the college route. I went straight to work with my dad. I loved it. Hard work, honest pay, and the satisfaction of building something real. But to Linda and her kids, I was always the loser of the family. You know, the guy who never lived up to his potential. What they didn't know, and what my dad always appreciated, was that I wasn't interested in their game. I didn't need to flaunt my life online or pretend to be something I wasn't. My dad trusted me because he knew I'd learned the business from the ground up. I wasn't just some spoiled kid waiting for a handout. The first time I realized they were planning something was during a family dinner about 2 weeks after Dad's funeral. Linda invited me over under the pretense of talking about Dad's legacy. I should have known it was a setup. The moment I walked in, the vibe was off. Linda smiled too much. Richard kept nodding like some creepy salesman. And Mark and Jenny, well, they barely looked at me. Instead, they were on their phones, whispering to each other and laughing. Linda poured me a glass of wine and said, "Sweetie, I know this must be hard for you. Losing your father, and now all these responsibilities falling on your shoulders." I sipped the wine, staying quiet. That company of his, it's a lot for one person to handle. Maybe you'd be happier if we managed it for you. We could make sure everything is taken care of. You'd still get something, of course. A small share. I almost choked. A small share? My father built that company from nothing. It was his life's work. And here she was, trying to talk me into handing it over like I was some clueless kid. I played dumb, though. I just smiled and said, "I'll think about it." But deep down, I knew something bigger was coming. Sure enough, the very next day, I got a letter from their lawyer. Yes, they had already hired one, saying they intended to challenge the validity of the will. The letter went on about how I wasn't equipped to run a business, and how Dad's mental state in his final months was questionable. They were basically trying to say my father wasn't of sound mind when he wrote the will, which was complete BS. My dad was sharp until the day he died. In fact, a week before he passed, we were still going over business contracts together. He even joked about how Linda would probably lose her mind when she found out what he left me. "She's gonna hate this," he laughed. And boy, was he right. That's when I realized I couldn't just sit back and hope things worked out. I needed to fight, but not in the way they expected. Linda, Richard, and their spoiled kids thought I'd hire a lawyer, show up in court, and hope for the best. That's exactly the kind of fight they wanted, one they thought they could win with money and manipulation. But me? I had something they didn't, the element of surprise. I started by digging. If they wanted to challenge me, I'd find every skeleton they had in their closets. I had no idea how deep it went, but I was determined to find out. I knew my family could be greedy, but I underestimated just how low they'd sink. When that letter from their lawyer came, it felt like a punch to the gut. They weren't just questioning my ability to run Dad's company. They were trying to erase me from his life entirely. It was like they wanted to rewrite history and pretend I wasn't even his son. A few days after I got the letter, I was invited to another family meeting. I should have ignored it, but I went, mostly out of curiosity. I wanted to see just how far they were willing to go. The second I walked into Linda's living room, I could tell this wasn't just some casual get-together. The place looked staged, like a corporate boardroom. Papers stacked neatly on the coffee table. Richard was in one of his overpriced suits. Mark and Jenny were sitting side by side, all smug and polished, like they'd just rehearsed a script. Linda didn't waste time with fake smiles this time. "We need to talk about the company and the estate," she said, her voice dripping with authority she didn't have. I sat down slowly, my eyes scanning the room. "What about it?" She sighed like I was some stubborn kid who didn't understand the adult conversation. "You don't have the experience to handle a multi-million-dollar business, Richard, and I think it's best if you sign over control to us. You'll still get a monthly allowance. Enough to live comfortably." A monthly allowance. I almost laughed. They were trying to take everything my father left me and throw me scraps, like I was some pet. "I'm not signing anything," I said flatly. That's when Richard leaned forward, his fake smile gone. "Look, kid, this isn't personal. We're just trying to do what's best for the family. If you don't cooperate, this could get ugly. We've already started looking into your past mistakes." I froze for a second. Past mistakes? I didn't have anything major to hide. Yeah, I had a few rough years when I was younger, parties, a speeding ticket or two, but nothing serious. What were they talking about? Linda smirked. You know, the courts don't look kindly on someone with a history of reckless behavior. Do you really think a judge would let someone like that handle a company? That's when it clicked. They were planning to dig up, or maybe even fabricate, dirt on me to make me look unfit to inherit. They weren't just challenging the will. They were going for a character assassination. I kept my face neutral, but inside, I was boiling. Do whatever you want, I said calmly. I'm not giving up what Dad left me. Jenny rolled her eyes. Honestly, you're so stubborn. You could have had an easy life. But fine, ruin everything like you always do. I didn't stay much longer. As I walked out, I heard Mark mutter, he's going to regret this. On the drive home, my mind was racing. These weren't just greedy relatives anymore. They were predators. They wanted to strip me of everything my father built, everything I'd worked for, and they were willing to lie, cheat, and manipulate the system to make it happen. That night, I called Dad's old lawyer, Mr. Thompson. He'd been with my father for over 20 years and knew all the ins and outs of his estate. I told him what was happening, and he wasn't surprised. Your aunt has always been like this, he said. But this time, she's biting off more than she can chew. Your father's will is airtight. If they want to challenge it, they're going to have to come up with something big. I leaned back in my chair, gripping the phone. I think they're going to try. I wouldn't be surprised if they faked evidence to make me look unfit. There was a pause on the other end. Then you'd better start protecting yourself. Document everything. Record conversations if you have to. And if they're hiding something, find it. Trust me, people like your Uncle Richard always have something to hide. Those words stuck with me. Always have something to hide. The next day, I started digging, not into my own past, but into theirs. I knew Richard's investments always seemed sketchy. He bragged a lot, but never had real answers. I started by looking at public records, court documents, anything I could find online. And guess what? It didn't take long to find some smoke. A lawsuit here, a tax lien there. It wasn't enough to destroy them yet, but it told me one thing. Richard's perfect image was just a front. Meanwhile, Linda started ramping up her attacks. I got calls from mutual friends asking if I was okay, because apparently Linda had been spreading rumors that I was unstable after Dad's death. She even told someone I had a drinking problem, which was hilarious, because I don't even like beer. It was clear they were preparing for war. But so was I. The very next morning after that tense family meeting, I woke up with one goal in mind. Dig up every rotten secret Linda, Richard, and their golden children were hiding. If they wanted to destroy me, I was going to tear down their fake, shiny empire first. My father had always taught me one simple rule. If someone's hiding something, start with the money. So, I started digging into Richard's so-called investments. He loved bragging about real estate deals and big projects, but when I started searching through public records, I found nothing. Well, not nothing. Just a trail of unpaid property taxes, a couple of failed LLCs, and a lawsuit from a former business partner who accused him of stealing funds. That was my first clue. Richard wasn't some slick, self-made businessman. He was a con artist living on borrowed time. I decided to dig deeper. One of my dad's friends, Mike, an old accountant who had helped my father with the company books, owed me a favor. Over a couple of beers, I casually brought up Richard's name. Mike didn't even hesitate. Richard? That guy's shady as hell. Heard he's been moving money around under different company names to avoid taxes. Wouldn't be surprised if the IRS is already watching him. Bingo. That was exactly the kind of dirt I needed. But I didn't want to rely on hearsay. I wanted solid evidence. I started keeping notes of every conversation I had with them. I even began recording phone calls with Linda. You'd be amazed at how quickly people slip up when they think they're in control. One night, Linda left me a voicemail basically admitting she was planning to take over Dad's company. That little gem went straight into my revenge folder. Meanwhile, I started looking into Mark and Jenny. Perfect, flawless Mark? Yeah. Turns out he had 2 maxed out credit cards and a repossessed car. And Jenny, the Instagram influencer, was faking sponsored posts. Half of her luxury vacations were staged photos from albums she never paid for. The more I learned, the angrier I became. Not because they were frauds. I already suspected that. No, I was angry because they dared to call me unfit to inherit my father's legacy, while their entire lives were built on lies. Then I got my first real break. One night, I was scrolling through some public court documents and found Richard's name connected to a company I'd never heard of. The company had recently been flagged for fraudulent activity, money laundering, and tax evasion. My jaw dropped. This was the smoking gun. If I could link Richard to this scam, not only would their attempt to challenge the will collapse instantly, but I could also bring the law down on them like a hammer. I didn't want to act too quickly, though. I needed more proof. So, I called Mr. Thompson, my dad's lawyer, and told him what I'd found so far. He chuckled. Son, you're onto something. If you can dig up those records, this will be game over for them. But be careful. If they suspect what you're doing, they'll double down. That's when I realized I needed to play the long game. I couldn't just throw accusations around. I had to let them think they were winning while I built my case piece by piece. The next time Linda called, I pretended to be overwhelmed. I told her I was thinking about selling the company because it was too much responsibility. She ate it up like candy. Oh, sweetie, that's the smart thing to do. Let us handle it. You just relax. Behind the scenes, though, I was pulling every record I could find, property deeds, tax filings, even social media posts that could connect their timeline of lies. I also started reaching out to a couple of my father's old business contacts. A few of them told me stories about Richard trying to muscle his way into Dad's company years ago, but Dad always shut him down. Apparently, this inheritance grab wasn't new. It was just their latest attempt. The deeper I went, the dirtier it got. I found emails that Richard had sent to a business partner threatening to bury him if he didn't stay quiet about a failed investment. I found a screenshot of a Facebook post where Mark bragged about using company funds for family expenses. It was like they left a trail of breadcrumbs, and I was following it straight to their downfall. By the end of that week, I had a small but powerful folder of evidence, enough to make them sweat. But I wasn't ready to reveal my hand just yet. Oh no, I wanted them to dig themselves even deeper. Because the best revenge isn't just winning. It's letting your enemies think they've won, right before you crush them. If there's one thing my father taught me about business, it's this. Sometimes the smartest move is to let your opponent think they're winning. That became my mantra. After all the digging and collecting dirt, I realized I couldn't just confront them yet. No, I needed them to feel safe, confident, even arrogant, so they'd make the biggest mistakes on their own. So I played dumb. I started acting like I was overwhelmed by everything, by the company, the will, the lawyers. I even stopped replying to their nasty comments on social media and the fake rumors Linda was spreading. Instead of fighting back publicly, I went silent. And let me tell you, silence is powerful. When people think you've given up, they get sloppy. A few days later, I called Linda and said, maybe you're right. Maybe I'm not cut out for all this responsibility. Dad never trained me for this. I think I need help. She practically squealed with joy. Oh, sweetie, I knew you'd come to your senses. Why don't you come over? We can talk about how to make things easy for you. Make things easy for me? Yeah, right. I showed up at her house with a blank notebook, pretending I was ready to sign whatever I needed to. Richard was all smiles that day, like he'd already won. He handed me a thick stack of documents, claiming they were just papers to transfer some management duties. I didn't sign a thing. I simply nodded, asked dumb questions, and took notes, because guess what? Those papers weren't just shady. They were evidence. Buried in that stack were pages that would have completely handed over the company to Richard's control if I had signed them. They were so confident I'd cave that they didn't even bother hiding their greed. I took photos of everything on my phone when they weren't looking. That's Exhibit A. Thank you very much. Over the next week, I kept up the act. I started dropping hints about being too tired to run the business and how I was worried about finances. Richard immediately bit the bait. He started pushing me to just sign the papers and walk away rich. Meanwhile, I was busy building my arsenal. Every conversation we had, whether in person, on the phone, or even over text, I recorded or saved. Linda loved to talk trash when she thought she was winning. One day, she slipped up and said, "Once we take this company, you'll thank us for keeping it out of your hands." She actually laughed after saying it. That audio recording is still on my phone, crystal clear. But here's where things got really interesting. I decided to feed them false information, something to keep them busy and distracted while I prepared the real trap. I told Linda I'd heard rumors about a secret bank account Dad might have left behind. Her eyes lit up like a slot machine jackpot. A bank account? What kind of rumors? She asked, trying to play it cool. Oh, I don't know, I said with a shrug. Maybe just something he left me for emergencies. Guess I'll check into it. From that moment, she was hooked. Within 2 days, Mark and Jenny were messaging me, pretending to care, but really fishing for details about this mysterious account. I could practically see the dollar signs in their eyes. What they didn't know was that I was tracking everything. Every question they asked, every desperate move they made to get more info. It was all part of the setup. I wanted them to believe there was some hidden treasure, something worth breaking all the rules for. And they were falling for it, hard. One night, I got a late call from Richard. He tried to sound casual, but his tone was too sharp. Hey kid, so, this secret account. Any chance we could work together on that? I mean, if it's outside the estate, maybe we can split it. You don't want to handle all that cash on your own, right? I almost laughed out loud. Instead, I said, I'll think about it. Every word they spoke, every shady suggestion, was becoming part of my case. And they didn't have a clue. I wasn't just defending my inheritance anymore. I was building a weapon that would not only protect me, but destroy them completely. The more they believed I was on the verge of giving up, the bolder they got. I could practically smell their desperation. That fake bank account rumor? It worked better than I expected. They were chasing the bait like hungry sharks, and I was about to hook them hard. I needed a plan that would not just expose them, but force them to dig their own graves. The key was their greed. Greedy people always push too far when they think they're close to winning. So, I created a story. I told Linda that I'd found some clues in Dad's old files, a mention of a secret savings account that wasn't listed in the will. I casually dropped hints that I might need help accessing it since I didn't know much about banking and legal processes. I acted confused, nervous, and uncertain, like a dumb kid in over his head. Linda's reaction was priceless. She pretended to be calm, but I saw the gleam in her eyes. Sweetie, if your father had something like that, it's best we take care of it for you. There could be legal complications. You wouldn't want to get in trouble. I bit my tongue to keep from laughing. Legal complications? She was practically salivating at the thought of stealing money that didn't even exist. Within 2 days, I got a text from Mark. Hey man, Mom told me about that account. You know, I work with finance stuff. Maybe I could help you move the funds safely. Finance stuff? Mark was a walking financial disaster. I ignored him. Meanwhile, I set the next phase in motion. I called my dad's lawyer, Mr. Thompson, and told him my plan. Look, they're trying to trick me into signing over the company, and now they're going after some fake account. What if I let them trap themselves? He chuckled. Son, if you can get them to make illegal moves, that's game over. Just be careful. You don't want to cross the line yourself. Don't worry, I said. I'll let them do all the dirty work. The first trap was simple. I drafted fake documents. Nothing real, just templates I found online, to make it look like there was a separate account tied to the company's profits. Then I mentioned, yeah, I might have to transfer funds soon, but I'm not sure how. I might ask a professional to help. The next day, guess who called? Richard. Listen, kid, he said, trying to sound fatherly. These accounts can be tricky. You need someone who knows the ropes. How about I take care of this for you? I can make sure everything's handled properly. Handled properly, my ass. He wanted me to hand over fake login details or some kind of authorization so he could take care of it. I played along. I told him I'd think about it and asked him to send me an email with what he'd need from me. Sure enough, that same night, I got a detailed list from Richard. It wasn't just shady, it was flat out illegal. He was asking for full access to accounts that didn't even exist, which meant he was ready to commit fraud if they did exist. I forwarded that email to Mr. Thompson and kept it in my growing pile of evidence. But I wasn't done yet. I decided to push them further, see how far they'd go. I sent Linda a message saying I'd found the account, but didn't know if I should tell anyone. Within minutes, she called, her voice dripping with fake concern. Sweetheart, you have to trust me. If people find out about that account, there could be problems. Why don't you let us handle this? We can transfer everything quietly. No one needs to know. Transfer everything quietly. That sentence was going to sound amazing in court. Over the next week, I kept feeding them small pieces of information. I told them I might have to withdraw a large amount of money soon and wasn't sure how taxes worked on something like that. Mark even offered to connect me with a guy who could move the money under the table. This was better than I could have planned. They weren't just showing their greed. They were handing me the rope I'd hang them with. Behind the scenes, I was working with Mr. Thompson to prepare for the inevitable showdown. We collected every text, every email, every recording. I even started a shared folder with timestamps and transcripts of their calls. By the time I was done, I knew I'd have a rock-solid case. But the best part? They had no clue I was setting them up. In their minds, I was still the clueless nephew who'd hand over everything with a smile. They had no idea that when the trap snapped shut, they'd lose not just their shot at the inheritance, but everything they thought made them powerful. By this point, I had enough evidence to make their lives miserable, but I wasn't going to blow it all at once. I wanted my first strike to shake them, to let them know something was wrong without revealing just how deep my claws were sunk into their schemes. I started with Richard. That man had always strutted around like he was untouchable, like his investments made him smarter and richer than everyone else. Well, I had news for him. I took the file of evidence I'd gathered, tax liens, lawsuits, shady business connections, and sent an anonymous tip straight to the IRS. I also forwarded a copy to a local investigative journalist I knew from one of my dad's charity events. 3 days later, the cracks began to show. Richard called me out of the blue, his voice tense, like he'd been punched in the gut. "Hey, kid, you haven't said anything about my businesses, have you?" I smiled to myself. "Nope. Why?" He muttered something about paperwork issues and hung up. That same evening, I heard through the grapevine that one of his accounts had been frozen for review. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make him sweat. While Richard scrambled, I turned my focus to Mark and Jenny. Their perfect online image was a ticking time bomb. I anonymously sent screenshots of Mark's unpaid debts and repo history to a financial gossip page that loved tearing apart fake influencers. I also tipped off a couple of brands Jenny claimed to work with, letting them know she'd been faking her sponsorships. Within a week, Jenny's Instagram page was eerily quiet. Mark deleted half his posts. They didn't know it was me, but I didn't care. Watching their fake empire crumble from the sidelines felt like sweet justice. Meanwhile, Linda was still calling me daily, trying to get me to sign those papers. I pretended to hesitate, dragging the conversation out. "Linda," I said one afternoon, "maybe you're right. Maybe I just don't have what it takes. But I don't know if I can just give away Dad's company. It feels wrong." "Oh, sweetheart," she cooed. "You don't have to think of it as giving it away. You're just letting someone more experienced take the reins. You'll still be part of the family business, in a way." Her tone was sweet, but I knew what she was really saying. "Sign the papers so we can steal everything and leave you with scraps." I played along, telling her I'd review the documents. What she didn't know was that I'd already given copies of those same documents to Mr. Thompson. He confirmed they were blatantly fraudulent. Contracts designed to transfer not just the company, but also the house, and even some of my dad's personal accounts to Richard and Linda. And then I struck. One morning, I called Linda and told her I was ready to sign. But I needed a small favor first. I asked her to send me an email summarizing why they thought I wasn't capable of managing the estate. She hesitated but agreed. A few hours later, I received the most incriminating email you could imagine. Pages of her listing my flaws, from being immature to mentally unstable, none of which were true. She even admitted they were protecting the estate from someone like me. That email became Exhibit B. But the real power move was still coming. I took all the dirt I had, Richard's shady businesses, Mark and Jenny's fake success, Linda's manipulative emails, and quietly prepared a legal packet with Mr. Thompson. We were building the mother of all cases. To top it off, I leaked just enough information to make them nervous. I sent Linda a cryptic text, thinking about bringing in my lawyer. Something about Dad's last conversations doesn't add up. Maybe I should have the court look at everything? Her response was immediate and panicked. "Wait, no need for lawyers. Let's just handle this privately. We're family, right?" "Yeah, family. The kind that stabs you in the back with a smile." By the time Linda and Richard realized I wasn't as dumb as they thought, it was already too late. I had everything I needed: emails, recordings, fraudulent documents, and proof of their illegal schemes. All that was left was to bring it all into the light. And trust me, I wanted the whole damn world to see what kind of people they really were. It all started when I let them take me to court. Yes, you heard that right. I could have shut it all down with one call to the police or IRS, but that wasn't enough for me. I wanted them humiliated. I wanted them to stand in front of a judge and choke on their lies. They filed a lawsuit to challenge my father's will, claiming he was mentally unfit when he left everything to me. It was laughable. Dad was sharper than any of them, even on his worst days. Still, they came to court with their fake evidence, statements from friends, bogus documents, and a lawyer they clearly thought could crush me. The first hearing was surreal. Linda sat there in her expensive dress, looking like the queen of fake sympathy, dabbing her eyes with a tissue every time the judge looked her way. Richard sat stiff and smug, as if he already owned my father's company. Mark and Jenny were in the back, dressed like they were on trial for being the world's most annoying influencers. When the judge asked for opening statements, their lawyer went on and on about how I was irresponsible, unfit to manage a business, and potentially unstable. I didn't even flinch. Let them dig their hole. Then it was our turn. My lawyer, Mr. Thompson, stood up with the calmest smile I've ever seen. Your Honor, we have evidence that will not only uphold my client's rightful inheritance, but also demonstrate an attempted fraud against the estate. Linda's face went pale. Richard shifted in his seat. Oh, they knew something was coming, but they had no idea how bad it was going to get. The first bomb we dropped was the email Linda had sent me, listing all my so-called flaws. The judge raised an eyebrow as Mr. Thompson read it out loud. The tone of it was condescending, manipulative, and obviously written to discredit me without cause. Then we presented the recordings. Oh, those recordings were golden. Snippets of conversations where Linda and Richard practically admitted to trying to take over Dad's company. My favorite was when Richard said, "Once he signs, the idiot won't even know what he's losing." The courtroom gasped. Next, we unveiled the fraudulent documents they had tried to trick me into signing. Mr. Thompson pointed out how those contracts would have illegally transferred company assets into Richard's control. The judge's expression was priceless, part disbelief, part disgust. But we weren't done. Remember that IRS tip I sent? Well, the timing couldn't have been better. Just as we were presenting our case, Richard's financial mess started making headlines. We submitted copies of public records showing his tax issues and ongoing investigations. Suddenly, the man who had been acting like a financial genius looked like a crook caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Linda's lawyer tried to object, claiming it was irrelevant, but the judge wasn't buying it. If your clients are attempting to claim financial responsibility, their own financial behavior is absolutely relevant, the judge said sharply. By the end of the first day in court, their entire narrative was collapsing. Every time Mr. Thompson showed another piece of evidence, Linda looked like she was about to faint. Mark and Jenny sat in the back, whispering furiously, probably wondering how the hell they got into this mess. I didn't smile. Not once. I just sat there, calm and collected, letting the truth do the talking. Because nothing stings more than watching your lies unravel in public. The second day of court was when the real fireworks started. By now, Linda's mask of fake sympathy was cracking. Her smile looked forced, and Richard's usual arrogance had turned into silent rage. They knew they were in trouble, but they had no idea just how deep a hole I was about to dig for them. We came prepared. Mr. Thompson had organized all the evidence into a neat timeline. Every email, every recording, every shady move they made. When he laid it out for the judge, it was like watching dominoes fall one by one. Each piece of evidence made their story look weaker and mine stronger. Then came my turn to speak. I looked Linda right in the eyes as I told the judge how my father had trusted me, how he had personally made sure I was ready to take over his company, and how these family members had tried to twist his death into a payday. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't get emotional. I just told the truth. The judge listened carefully. Then Mr. Thompson dropped the final bomb. The recordings of Richard offering to handle the fake bank account and Linda's voice saying she wanted to transfer everything quietly. The courtroom was dead silent except for their voices playing over the speakers. I glanced over at them. Linda's face turned ghost white, and Richard looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. But the knockout punch wasn't even that. Mr. Thompson handed over a stack of new documents. Records from the IRS investigation I'd triggered weeks ago. It showed Richard's tax fraud and money laundering schemes in black and white. The judge raised her eyebrows and said, "Mr. Richards, are you aware that you are currently under federal investigation?" Richard stammered something incoherent, and that was it. The judge's patience snapped. This court does not look kindly on attempts to manipulate an estate through fraud. she said sternly. The evidence presented shows a clear pattern of deceit, coercion, and illegal activity by the plaintiffs. I will not only uphold the original will, but also refer certain matters to the authorities for further investigation. It was over. Just like that. Linda's lawyer tried to protest, but the judge silenced him with a glare. "Consider yourselves lucky I'm not charging you for contempt," she said. I could feel the tension in the room break as I finally exhaled. Months of planning, gathering evidence, and playing dumb had all led to this exact moment. But I wasn't done yet. The judge awarded me full control of my father's estate, as per his will, and even granted legal fees to be paid by Linda and Richard for attempting to defraud me. Essentially, they had to pay for my lawyer's work out of their own pockets. The look on Linda's face was priceless. She looked like she'd just bitten into a lemon. Then the final blow came from outside the courtroom. The moment we stepped out, a reporter from the local news channel approached Richard with a camera. "Mr. Richards, do you have any comment on the allegations of tax fraud and attempted estate manipulation?" I watched as Richard's face turned beet red. He muttered something about no comment and stormed off, with Linda chasing after him like her life was falling apart. Which, honestly, it was. Mark and Jenny tried to sneak out the side door, but not before I caught their eyes. I didn't say a word. I just smiled, a calm, quiet smile that said, "Game over." That night, I went home, poured myself a glass of whiskey, and sat on the porch of my father's house. I looked out at the land he'd worked his whole life to build, and for the first time since his death, I felt like I could breathe. The snakes were gone. The war was over. But the best part? This was just the beginning of my new life. When the dust settled, I stood on the front porch of my father's house with a feeling I hadn't experienced in months: peace. For the first time since his death, I wasn't consumed by anger or betrayal. I'd won. Not just the inheritance, not just the company, but my dignity. I proved to myself, and to everyone watching, that I was more than capable of carrying on my father's legacy. The news spread fast. Word of the court case got around town, and soon everyone knew the truth about Linda, Richard, and their spoiled kids. They became pariahs overnight. Their perfect little image was shattered beyond repair. Richard's business empire crumbled under the weight of IRS investigations. Mark and Jenny deleted their social media accounts when the truth about their fake success went viral. And Linda? She couldn't even show her face at the grocery store without people whispering behind her back. But I wasn't focused on them anymore. My revenge was complete. I didn't need to rub it in their faces. Their downfall was loud enough on its own. Instead, I turned my attention to what truly mattered: building my own life. I spent the next few months reorganizing Dad's company. I hired a solid team, modernized the systems, and started taking the business to the next level. It felt like Dad was still with me, guiding me through every decision. I remember walking through the office one evening, looking at the framed photo of him on the wall, and saying quietly, "We did it, Dad. We kept the snakes out." With the inheritance, I also invested in things I'd always dreamed about. I bought a small cabin by the lake, a place where I could clear my head. I started traveling, something I never had time or money for before. From the mountains of Colorado to the beaches of Hawaii, I let myself experience the world. And you know what? For the first time, I felt free. Looking back, the revenge wasn't just about taking back what was mine. It was about proving to myself that I wasn't the loser they always tried to paint me as. I was stronger than their lies, smarter than their games, and tougher than they ever imagined. One evening, as I sat by the lake, sipping a beer, I realized something profound. All that anger, all that plotting and planning, had turned into something bigger. It had turned into growth. I'd come out of this mess not just with my father's legacy intact, but with a new sense of purpose. Linda and her clan? They faded into the background. Last I heard, they were selling off what little they had left to pay for Richard's legal fees. That's not my problem anymore. I've learned something powerful through all this. Revenge isn't always about destroying someone else's life. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge is living well, thriving, and becoming everything they said you couldn't be. And me? I'm just getting started. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Did he do the right thing?